The units on parade are ready to carry out the opening ceremony. Lieutenant Tammisto, at your command.
Stand at ease!
From here we rushed into battle against Bolshevik violence in July of 1941. Signed, the ERNA Group and Brothers of the Forest.
Kõigi langenud ERNA veteranide ja relvavendade mälestuseks.
Piro Jõgi, one of the only surviving veterans of the original ERNA raids into Estonia, places a wreath at a monument to his lost comrades.
ERNA-välien muistoa kunnioittaa.
Suomi, Ruotsi, Norra, Siniparni.
Norwegian, Swedish, and Finnish judges and participants place a wreath to the original fallen casualties of the historic ERNA raids. It was on a voluntary basis, devoid of political connotation. The ceremonial honor guard was manned by young Estonian scouts. Even though at 5:30 in the morning, an important aspect of this 10th ERNA competition was completed, namely the inspection of equipment used by each participant, the official opening takes place at 10 in the morning in downtown Tallinn. The official ERNA time clock is set here, and thereafter all concerned are on ERNA time. Of the 28 teams in the ERNA competition, most Estonian military and other related professional services were involved, including Defense League, Reconnaissance Battalion, Military Academy, Border Guards, Reserve Officers, Engineering School, Police, Rescue Services, and Guard Battalion. Many teams who had wanted to participate did not make the grade, did not meet the rigorous standards of physical fitness and professional competence required to successfully complete an ERNA competition. Margus Hansson, Estonia's defense minister, greets the participants at the opening. Hansson remarked that the national defense forces do not have to be numerically large. Smaller forces, well-trained and equipped, could be equally effective. Vice Admiral Tarmo Goats stresses that it's unimportant who wins, but rather that the competition be successful. It's important for Estonia's international reputation prior to becoming a full member of NATO. At sunrise of the first day, the flags of the participating nations were ceremonially hoisted. The Finns had 2 teams. The Danes had been previously winners. The United Kingdom was there. China, the winners of the 10th ERNA, came with 2 teams. Austrians, Poles, Lithuanians, Swedes, and Estonians were enthusiastic competitors. In the main, the judges were from the defense forces of the Scandinavian countries of Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, mostly officers who have had United Nations peacekeeping experience. At the start, a rigorous inspection is carried out of all weapons, ammunition, and other equipment such as clothing, battlefield rations, survival equipment, first aid packets, knives, rope, maps, compasses, GPS technology, all that has been listed as mandatory by competition rules. In addition, competitors can also carry other aids. Each competitor must have the same items with them at the end of the grueling competition.
Sõidame ikka sinna kohale, kui sa oled praegu 75 tänane ilmateade. Niimoodi tormihoiatused on Läänemere põhjaosas, Liivilahe põhjaosas, Väina merel on niimoodi sulle vahel.
At the last minute during the 2003 competition, a planned air attack, which included parachutists, was cancelled due to extreme weather conditions that day. This was to avoid the paratroopers landing in high winds in dangerous areas where explosives had been planted. The landings took place very close to the beaches where the first ERNA group landed in 1941 near the island of Pirassar. The landings were launched off 4 Estonian Navy and Border Guard patrol vessels. Even before the actual competition begins, before judges are called upon to evaluate performance, the teams with their rubber landing craft are placed upon 4 patrol vessels of the Estonian Navy and Border Guards to sail for 4 hours to a point east of Tallinn at Salmistu to land on the beach under battlefield conditions. Military ordnance had been placed there to simulate a realistic situation for the large public present there. The idea of the ERNA raid competition derives from Estonian history. ERNA is a vivid symbol of a resistance movement against foreign aggressors. It's a prime example of swift and decisive action by a small group of men saving thousands of lives. At the end of World War I, Estonia declared its independence and from 1918 to 1920 won a hard-fought war of independence mainly against Russia's new Red Army. Tight bonds grew between Estonians and volunteer freedom fighters from Germany, Sweden, Denmark, Russia, and especially those from Finland, helping Estonia secure its independence. 2 decades later, Hitler's Germany and Stalin's USSR secretly agreed to carve up Europe for themselves. The USSR coerced Estonia into allowing Soviet forces to be stationed in Estonia. As a result, young Estonians headed off to Finland to help repel Soviet aggression. In the first half of 1940, the USSR occupied and annexed all Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Soon the first victims of Soviet repression died in death camps. In June of 1941, tens of thousands from all 3 Baltic countries were arrested and sent to concentration camps. Estonians sought refuge in swamps and forests. With the start of the Russo-German War, the Red Army forcibly mobilized Estonians into their ranks and launched a scorched earth campaign, forcing men into hiding once more. Estonians from swamps and forests mounted a fierce war of resistance, particularly against the Red Army's destruction battalions, which were ruthlessly destroying every gain Estonia had made during its independence. The first ERNA unit was 65 Estonians who had gone to Finland to fight the Soviets. As a reconnaissance and diversion initiative, the first ERNA operation was launched with 4 officers and 38 soldiers who returned to Estonia on a Finnish patrol boat. In July of 1941, they landed on the beach at Salmistu. Avoiding Red Army patrols, they moved south and reached the moors at Gautla 9 days later. About 2,000 people, mostly women and children, were already hiding in the area. Only 200 to 300 of the men were armed. Soviet probes and raids in the area increased, and soon 6 destruction battalions and many Red Army units were operating there. Even though 17 men were airdropped to bolster the ERNA group, they were soon forced into a defensive battle against the encircling destruction battalions. The largest and bloodiest battle occurred at Gautla on July 31st, 1941, the same day Germany banned further Finnish weapons deliveries to Estonian refugees. Some 48 Estonians fought a delaying action halting strong Red Army columns. With the Estonians losing 2 and the Red Army suffering many losses, the fight fulfilled its mission. Civilians and the wounded escaped into the surrounding forests and marshes. The killings of local residents and destruction of villages ceased for the time being. After these battles, ERNA in smaller groups fought elsewhere, even forming a regular infantry battalion that was amongst the first to reach the outskirts of Soviet-held Tallinn. They were then halted by the German command. The honor of capturing the city center was given to German regular units. Realizing that Germany didn't support Estonia's independence, nor the independent unions fighting for it, many in ERNA headed back to Finland and joined the Finnish army. The remaining ERNA members, with some volunteers, continued fighting as ERNA 3, successfully liberating several islands from the terror of the remaining Soviet occupants. The battalion was disbanded in October of 1941. It would take another 50 years to restore Estonian independence in 1991.
See oli palju ja ma siin seisin seal soomlaste selle taga ja nemad ikka võpatasid päris palju.
Every year, the viewing public at the beach landing has increased, with people arriving from all over Estonia, even Finland. After the public landing demonstration, the boats are left behind to be gathered up by others.
me ei olnudki paadis. Te ei olnud paadis? Ei, need mehed on juba läinud, kes paadis olid, muidugi.
The teams then proceed to the official start location, a camp about 1.5 kilometers in the forest, where no unauthorized people are allowed. The teams then prepare for the start of the competition. Each team heads through the start during an approximate 5-hour opening in a sequence previously determined by a draw of numbers. The team has to reach the first control point during a pre-established 5-hour window. Teams that don't hold to the schedule are eliminated. The teams must exert themselves for 4 days, 3 nights. That's the length of the competition.
Have a good trip.
And next part it will be this. And we will call this is surrounded by this tape. Please be inside tape. And black boxes, they are issuing them right. Starting line will be there, and there. This is solid.
They cannot add any additional equipment to their gear. They must proceed from control point to control point without being caught, without being detected. They cross the same terrain of dense woods, bogs and marshes, and unexpected counteroffenses, like the original ERNA unit sent from Finland to Salmisto and then proceeding to the finish at Gautla, the way it was over 60 years ago. Each team was supplied with topographical maps indicating locations of mandatory control points. Several routes were also suggested, but it was up to each team to find the most efficient route, keeping in mind the very real dangers of bogs and marshes into which people have disappeared. This terrain would be especially strange for teams familiar with mountainous Austria or China's vast plains. The teams also had to pass through populated areas and public roads undetected. Gautla. It's approximately 80 kilometers from Estonia's capital, Tallinn, not far from the center of Estonia, a land much different from that of many competition teams. Gautla is also the location of the largest battle for ERNA over 60 years ago. At Gautla, the competition finishes. The day before the start, the rules and regulations of the competition were spelt out. It was explained what the teams could take with them, what wasn't allowed. Emergency aid procedures were detailed. At Gautla, a running account of the competition's progress would be compiled as control point judges would forward the results via field radio as teams passed through these locations or as teams failed to reach them on time. This is the location of the base camp, the competition headquarters, the field kitchen with excellent food, and home for all administrative personnel.
Meat is with potatoes.
Okay.
One day before the start, it was interesting to observe how teams readied themselves psychologically. They knew that the most efficient teams would cross about 75 kilometers of varying topography if they were lucky. Those that took widely circuitous routes could possibly travel some 150 kilometers from start to finish over 4 days.
Change the channel, press this button.
The day before the finish, the Kautla base camp was open to the public, with open-air concerts, airplane rides over the competition route, displays of historical weapons and medals, good meals from the field kitchen personnel, the officers' mess hosting guests. The public got a hearty welcome from ERNA organizers. The first control point to which cameras were reluctantly allowed was Bravo. Prior to this, over 1 day and night, a secret reconnaissance assignment over publicly inaccessible firing ranges had been completed. Thanks to the initiative of helicopter pilots of Estonia's Amari Air Base, the camera crew was able to land at the strenuous test of forging the Soodla River.
Yeah. Okay. The team preparing 5 minutes there, put the gear together, follow the signs, and start from there. Either use the rope or the flotation device if they can make. Bring one by one gear and the gun. Doesn't have to get, there has to be dry, so won't get wet. Come over here, the whole team with the ropes and everything. Come up and then move here behind the line here. And they get a penalty if they drop anything in the water. That's fine. So that's the task for this point here. And then they continue over the bridge. They get a top secret code and continue the journey to the next stage. After that they have some rest for 4 hours. They can use that.
The cameras were able to capture the physical prowess of the Austrian and Chinese teams making their way through the cold northern waters of Estonia. It was a test of enduring ultimate discomfort. After this effort, the teams went for a mandatory sleep, undisturbed by anybody. Competition rules demanded that at least one 4-hour sleep period had to be completed during the length of the 3-night, 4-day competition. It was equally strenuous and also stressful for the competition organizing team assigned to building each control point. As all teams had completed the passage through one control point, the specified organizing team had to quickly dismantle this and rush off to the next control point to construct and ready it for the arriving judges. A question was posed to the judges. Has everything proceeded well? The answer? All teams are well. There's been no injuries, no casualties, but all are a little wet, a little muddy. We leave the teams to their 4-hour restful sleep. With international observers, the camera crew was able to visit the highly secret headquarters of the resistance, the organized counter-offensive.
This exercise we are all the time in the same place, we don't move. And now we have 3 companies in the field. Alpha Koi, Charlie Koi and Bravo Koi. Pardon,
And this area is up tomorrow or?
Yes,
from tomorrow.
This baseline Oscar, we finished at 8 August in 2:30, and after that they...
The resistance was handled by professional Estonian personnel, namely members of the Scout Battalion. The competition is still in its initial stages. Our work is done. It's up to us to generate minus points against the teams. We've even managed to capture a few teams. Our responsibility is to surreptitiously cause confusion and disorientation among the teams, to hinder their advance through their chosen route. We have to do this on the sly, without too much commotion, so as not to attract the attention of the next advancing teams. We try to avoid loud confrontation. From the helicopter, we get a bird's eye view of the rest area for the competitors. Observers were not allowed near. The cameras were able to film an instance in which a secret message was tossed to prisoners under guard by the competition resistance. This took place at a simulated prison camp situated in open terrain, making it extremely difficult for teams to approach, but not impossible. The aim was for each team to pass a message to the prisoners undetected. If successful, the team gained plus points.
On praegu kedagi oodata ka või? Ei tea.
Võivad tulla küll. Öösel käisid mitu korda.
Ja vangid ikka süüa saavad.
Question: do the prisoners get to eat? Answer: yes. Some field rations. The prisoners should not have been able to get beyond the razor wire, but when one prisoner sauntered out of the guarded camp area, he was severely castigated by a guard, warned that he could be shot. The guard must be wary of any approaching competitor and able to force intruders away.
Charlie to Delta. Delta was a task where the teams should pass over water. They had a rubber boat to put their equipment in, but they were not allowed to be in the rubber boat, so they had to tow or push the rubber boat over this space of water. And it was all timed, and the quickest over the water, of course, wins this checkpoint. And then the teams moved on against Echo. And that's all that happened during the 5th of August. It's easy to say that's all, but it was very rainy, the night was cold, and I think personally that the teams had a very hard start on this exercise.
But all the teams had reported to both Delta and Echo, and were finishing Echo as I left to come back here and moving out to Foxtrot 1. No significant issues with either of the first 2 points that were completed. There's a range of scores, as you might expect. The motivation is high, and everybody's giving it a very best shot, and counteraction was busy in between the 2 points outside of the restricted zone. One thing that several of the teams mentioned to me
mitu võistkonda ütles mulle ühte asja.
Was that, and this may not come as good news to you, but they were actually happy that the support people were not out on the trail, and there weren't lots of cars from the support. It was just more of a pure training environment, and all the people on the trail, the soldiers, thought that was good. That's the situation, and I'll either take questions right now if they pertain to what I've said, or I can hold them as the chief said until the end.
The teams were under constant aerial surveillance. At night, observers were able to witness the activity through night vision technology. The numerous competition staff spent their evenings in friendly gatherings beside bonfires at the main base at Gautla. The public was invited to Control Point Golf. About 3/4 of the competition route had been completed here, where first aid tasks were tested. Namely, the teams were confronted with a serious vehicle accident with casualties. Control Point Golf put to a real test the competitors' experience and knowledge, their physical prowess, their skill and accuracy in shooting, their cleverness in tactics and strategy, and their ability to exploit and use to the maximum the brief rest period given to them. The umpires here were professional medical staff, physicians.
Kaelalahas on see, mis võib kehvalt pandud on. Jah, ma ütlen kaelalahas. Kuidas imelik on see, et kohe unustatakse Kaire ära. Mis, mida ja kuidas? See on see tiimliidi tegevus. Nii, kohtade tagasi. Sina lähed nüüd alla või? Olgu, Tarmo. On ka vahepeal, jah? Tee sina pauk, jah? Saab ikka, jah? Sinu on teada.
Following this, the competitors had to pass through stretches of water and land saturated with mines, which self-detonated upon contact. The small explosions were designed not to injure. The preparation for this and tasks at other control points was supervised by Yuri Rocco, whose expertise was necessary to construct the entire ERNA route with its various planned obstacles. The first aid task was immediately followed by a block and tackle rope slide, in which speed was crucial.
Jalad peale! Komme! Jalad peale! Vaata püksid. Tal ei tule, seal on... Mis mõttes ei tule, kurat? Rohkem ei tule. Nii, palun. Jalad peale. Jalad peale, võta ära. Come on. Okay, thank you. Nii, loed tuli. Sobi, küll mis ära kolis, lähte sinna.
Here we meet the experienced Järva Defense League team who finished third in this 10th ERNA competition and has won first place previously.
Ready, go, left!
Competitors then forged through a water course, first in shallow, then deep water, and were timed for speed, still in full field dress. They then had to prove their handgun marksmanship on a pistol range.
Piirivalve tuleb, jah?
Their stamina was once again tested in water, having also to overcome water obstacles. Dripping wet, they had then to display their proficiency with automatic weapons.
Jah, oleme. Yeah, we had to play with it on the boat. Yeah, shit.
At the end of the tasks at Control Point Golf, the competitors were allowed to briefly rest. All competitors underwent medical checkups here to determine their fitness to finish the ERNA course. Now they were allowed for the first time also to meet their team support staff. From here they proceed in the same sequence used at the start on the last leg of the competition, a stretch where they will meet serious counter-offensive.
Second day of competitions, all the record patrols have moved from control point Delta through control point Echo to the control point Foxtrot. They have performed tasks in two control points, Delta and Echo, and they have begun to perform the tasks in control point Foxtrot, what is wreck task. And this task will be continued during approximately 48 hours.
no selle ERNA-ga seoses on siis nii palju, et ERNA pealaager.
From the helicopter, the camera gets a good bird's eye view of the Kautla area, a terrain full of marshes and bogs, not easily accessible by road. This was the location of the ERNA camp in 1941, where battles were fought against Red Army units and the Soviet Destruction Battalion. Although the ERNA group formed the nucleus of this camp, some 1,500 others had also established their hiding places here, escaping Soviet deportations and arrests. Only about 1/3 of the camp was armed. At 1,500, it was the largest of the 1941 anti-Soviet Estonian resistance groupings. Soviet forces had burned down 27 farms in the area and liquidated families, suspecting local farmers in aiding and harboring anti-Soviet elements.
Seltskond oli ka siis päris suur, kes siia Rabajärvedele kogunes. Ja nii palju siis ka, et ümbruskonna talupojad said kõvasti kannatada, kuna siin väidetavalt põletati maha 27 talu hävituspataljoni poolt, kuna ei suudetud nagu neid ernalasi tabada, aga siis karistada said talupojad, kes neid
The Soviet Destruction Battalion destroyed the Kautla farm itself by fire, killing 8 people, the youngest, the 2-year-old, and the oldest, a farm worker named Hida Hallorov. In setting fire to the hay shed, the Destruction Battalion was unaware of explosives hidden there, thus causing casualties amongst its own members. Stalin had given strict orders not to allow any grain of wheat, not a drop of fuel to be kept by any Estonian farmers. Thus, local farmers were protecting their possessions against the Destruction Battalion, armed only with hunting weapons. It was obvious that the Soviets were systematically destroying all viable farming properties.
Kaitsta neid oma talusid hävingust.
Whereas the resistance or counteroffensive had been applied only at specific locations in the previous stretches of the competition route, now the resistance was exercised in full force, utilizing armored vehicles, aircraft, and communication technology to apply maximum counterforce in hindering the advance of the teams.
Kus kohast? Selle vahe sees sealt tulid nagu banaanipuu otsast. See on niisugune rägastik, seal käis nagu küliti ja jõuab siit järgi. Noh!
Resistance units were manned by professional Scouts Battalion personnel who constantly notified the resistance headquarters about the success or failure of the various teams. The public was also allowed to observe from aircraft the progress of the teams, not an easy endeavor because the thick wooded areas provided ample cover for the competitors. The last control point, India, was located on the lands of Kauna Farm, owned by Peter Laur, our narrator on the helicopter ride.
Üks on siis, oli see Kauna talu siin.
Peter Laur's family roots reach back to this area, and he has established his farm as a site for ERNA and Defense League activities. The Soviets in 1941 killed the men of Kauna Farm, sent the women to Siberia, and separated the children to Russian orphanages. Upon returning to their homeland as adults, the children couldn't speak their native language.
It was dark, yes. How can you look at?
The shooting competition at Control Point India was not considered in the final accumulation of points because it continued from pitch black conditions into daylight, giving undue advantage to those firing under more favorable conditions.
Kui märklaua alt paistaks üles mööda märklauda paistaks valg.
Paistaks alt üles kõrvalt peale, tähendab seda, et
kas või taskulampi neid.
Team number 5. Okei. Kus kohas muud ovat? Number 5. Hyvä?
He sanovat, että hirveä sotku. Että miksi on niin, että ne ampuvat nyt pimeässä, muut, joka tulee myöhemmin, niin ne ampuvat vaalissa.
Yes. Denmark. Okay. You take this road about 30 meters and come on,
Four minutes. Okay, starting like this and time stopping the battle.
The night starts took off from Control Point India. At first, the teams had to cover a formidable obstacle course that truly put on trial the competitors' strength, agility, endurance. The Danes, giving first aid to a team member, were rated overall as the most proficient in medical assistance and received a special award from the Swedes for this competence. Even with one of their team members out of the competition, the Danes, under competition rules, were still allowed to finish. A knife-throwing competition showed how difficult it was for competitors to gain points at this elusive skill. The public started to arrive as early as 4 in the morning to witness the start of the physically demanding 6.5-kilometer spurt to the finish, a run to be completed under full field equipment. From 6 o'clock in the morning, the ERNA finish control point was opened to the public. After the grueling 6.5 kilometer run to the finish, it was difficult to distinguish one team from another, even for the team's own support staff. The actual finish for each team was determined by the closing of the rear hatch of the truck, simulating the closing of a helicopter door. Many teams participated to gain valuable experience from the competition, not necessarily expecting to win high scores. The top scores were established by experienced participants used to the strenuous trials and tribulations awaiting them. A large crowd had gathered in the slight drizzle to see the determination of the finishing competitors. In spite of complicated scoring, the final results were available very quickly, thanks to constant radio communication by umpires. These judges also inspected each contestant's equipment at the finish, deleting points for missing or unauthorized items. The umpires are executing the concluding inspection of equipment of Estonia's Scouts Battalion, who won second place overall. The most exciting aspect of the competition was the final competition and presentation of scores. This determined the winners and established the teams in order of placement. The overall ERNA 10th anniversary competition winner was Finland's team number 2. Presenting the first place award is the competition chief, Major Benno Leesik, commander of Estonia's Defense League, and ERNA Society's president, Lieutenant Meelis Rätse. We extend to you a warm welcome to the next 10 years of ERNA competitions.